of this. I followed another mom's story, Lisa, who was a mutual friend, and I found her because her daughter, Kira, had a terminal type of cancer similar to my daughter's, and she also went overseas. And she was so brave in sharing her story and all of the ugly and the beauty and the healing. And she had gone before me, and Kira had passed when I found her story and her page. Olivia was still with me in the physical sense. I was still holding her in my arms, and I was following her journey. She had gone overseas for additional treatments that were not offered in the US, which is what we ended up doing for my daughter, Olivia. So I was very connected to this mom who I did not know, only through the world of Facebook. And yet I could be in a hospital bed anywhere in the world. And at one point we were overseas in Germany and they were in England, but yet we were brought together by no coincidence. And she shared her journey, and you had worked so closely with her, and she shared, and no coincidences. So 1 month exactly to the date before Olivia passed. So it was March 3rd. Olivia passed on April 3rd, 2017. Lisa posted your 10 things that I've learned in 10 years. And the big kicker was on forgiveness. So here I am in a hospital bed. I live in Illinois. We were in Cleveland because that's where Olivia's home team was. And I was holding her in my arms. She was asleep. Pain meds, tumor growth makes the body really, really sleepy and really, really tired. So I'm holding her and I'm scrolling through Facebook. No coincidences, I find your face via Lisa's page. And I watched this video of you, and I immediately felt a connection with you. And I watched all of that. I think it was maybe 20, 30 minutes. I had my headphones in so that she could still sleep. Nurses are coming in and out. The IV pole is beeping, but yet I'm watching this soul talk about his daughter, his wife, his son. And 1 month to the day, I found you. And I don't just feel, I am so blessed that I was introduced to you even while Olivia was still in my arms in the physical presence. I've talked to so many that have met you years after they come across your books. They feel blessed to have met you. What a gift that Olivia's spirit and Lisa's daughter, Kira's spirit, all helped to guide me to you before that. So that's how I was initially introduced to you. And then she passed in April. I signed up in the fall for the first retreat via online, a 5-week retreat that you offered. And at that same time, there was another retreat, Healing a Mother's Heart. And I was able to meet you in person in Wisconsin while I was still working with you online.
I'm wearing my shirt.
And your heart strong, which I almost put on today, but it's not clean.
Yes. So we need to give our friend Jessica Lindberg a shout out, because it's Jessica Lindberg's retreat that actually brought us together face to face.
And full disclosure, I was a recipient of a scholarship of that amazing retreat, which helped to sew the pieces of me back together. It really did. It's been such a process, and each little piece has been put together beautifully and placed by the divine.
So do you remember what was the month and the date of that retreat?
It was
the month and the year.
I want to say it was October, November 2017, because Olivia passed in the spring, and then it was that fall that I actually physically, we had been working together online, but I was able to see you at that same time.
Yeah.
I was able to in person during that weekend.
What did it feel like so shortly, so soon after Olivia passed, to be in that environment with those other moms?
It was amazing, and I was ready though. So Olivia's journey was a beautiful, if you can call dying from cancer beautiful. She was such a brilliant, beautiful, radiant soul. So everything that she did was beautiful. But it was a 4-year journey, almost 4 years. So it was a long process. And there was a lot of steps along that way. So when I found you, and again, no coincidences, two of the other moms that were there at that same retreat, which could have been in anywhere, USA, we were together in New York City because that at the time was like the mecca for pediatric cancers. And two of the other moms, their daughters had the same form of cancer, which was neuroblastoma. My Olivia had Ewing sarcoma, which is rare, but also rare enough that you have to go wherever you can go to be with your A team. And at the time, our A team was at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York City. So here we go from the middle of the cornfield in Illinois to New York City, and I meet these two other moms whose kiddos also pass, and we all meet up with you and Jessica Lindberg at this beautiful hotel in the fall on the lake in Wisconsin. And I got to meet you, and I have my picture of us three and you and us all holding our pictures of our all daughters, beautiful girls, that again, like no coincidences, we were all led to you for a reason. And Lisa paved the way by her bravery on social media.
And that weekend at the Abbey in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, in your wildest dreams, did you ever think that you and I would literally be working together in 2020?
If my highest self could formulate a plan of what I would love for my life to look like, yes. But in that state and where I was in 2017, I wasn't able to do that. But if I could have removed her and then thought, sky's the limit, what do you want to do with this next chapter of your life? I'm looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jessica is going to be working with me as a project manager. And as folks take a step towards me and towards working one-on-one with me, or the online programs that I'm offering, or as the virus permits, the retreats, and with Dawn Whitcomb, the trip to South Africa, and with my friend Christine, the retreat, you don't even know about this yet, Jessica, the retreat in Florida before Christmas and in January, and on and on and on. And with Ruth Marie, Cape Cod, folks will get to know you more and more and more, and get to experience with those of us that do know you, are honored to be in the presence of day after day after day. So it's a dream that I held for 2 years. I told you that. And the fact that here we are, the timing is right, it's unfolding perfectly. It makes my heart sing.
Mine as well. And I know that our loved ones are singing right along with us. Absolutely. And I couldn't be more grateful and more happy to be here.
So could you start at the beginning, wherever the beginning is, and kind of paint, we see you today, you know, from what you've shared, we know you have a daughter named Olivia who died of Ewing sarcoma. Back it up, back it up, back it up. You know, who were you 20 years ago? Who were you 15 years ago? What was the dream that you had for your life? You know, tell us, Tell us,
Yeah.
paint a picture so we know who Jessica is.
Yeah, so that was many transformations ago. But I wanted to be a mom more than anything in the world. And that did not come naturally or easily to me. So, Olivia, my daughter that has passed, she was my firstborn. And I fought to bring her into the world. And I fought to keep her here as long as I could. And she fought to stay as long as she could as well. And I gave her the name Olivia because she had a strong will to live. I did that with intention. There was no coincidences in that. So I had to have infertility treatments in order to bring both of my girls into the world. And I had a premonition that that would be the case. And I was right. After things weren't working in the family department, I went to seek out specialists, and they said, yep, you're going to need some additional assistance. And I had such a perfect moment. There's been a few moments in my life. I'm 42. I'll be 43 next month. There's been just a few moments in my life where I have felt perfectly aligned with the divine. And one of those moments was in a doctor's office when they were doing the procedure for me to become a mom. And they had wanted to do only 3. And then they wanted to increase the level of clinical severity in order for me to conceive naturally on my own. Still me, still my husband at the time, still us, but they wanted to, we were going to have to go for in vitro fertilization. And I said, you know what? Something told me with such clarity, one more time, Jess, one more time. So here I am in a clinical room, and I had this vision, and it has not, again, like a handful of times. I wish I could say that it happened every day, that it still happens, but it doesn't. It was such a gift from the divine. I knew, and it was just me in the room. This was 2008. Before iPhones, I had like my iPod. I had my music on shuffle. I had chosen carefully the music that I was listening to. And this procedure had been done. And I saw a vision with perfect clarity that God had answered my prayer. But it was the first time, Tom, that I had prayed the prayer of not granting me with the perfect, healthy baby. I said, grant me with the perfect baby, the perfect child for me, whatever that looked like. And in my mind, believe it, I don't know who else is listening, who else is receiving the message. If I weren't there and receiving it myself, I might be a skeptic, but it happened to me in my body. I saw it with complete clarity that God granted, and the angels brought the message to me. And I knew that I was a mom at that moment, that conception happened. And it was just me in that room with my iPod. And I knew. And when you're going through all of this, injections, meds, everything, you're followed so closely. So it wasn't just like, oh, go home, take a pregnancy test. No, they're coming in, they're doing blood tests, they're rechecking. And at one point, a few weeks later, they said, okay, you're pregnant, but your levels aren't where they should be. We actually think, because we could look at our imaging, that you have an ectopic pregnancy, which means like the pregnancy has happened in the ovarian tube, which is fatal for the mom, certainly for the baby. So they were rushing. At this time, we were living in Champaign. So they were rushing me. They told me to pack an overnight bag. I was going to have emergency surgery and to get to Indianapolis, which is where my reproductive endocrinologist was out of. Get there as soon as I could. And then, do you remember the old Palm Pilots, like before the iPhone? That's what I had. So I looked up that and I thought, that's not right. That doesn't feel right. Why would I have had this clarity, this moment of peace in that room? So I look it up, and I just did my research as I continued to do as life unfolded for us. Make a long story short, we got to Indy, which their hospital had more advanced technology and better equipment than our local hospital in Champaign, Illinois, which is where we were living at the time. And I said, check one more time. They were going to take me into surgery, and I would have lost Olivia. I would have lost, part of my reproductive system. And I said, can you check one more time? And they did. And they said, not only do we not think it's ectopic, but we think we see a heartbeat where it should be. But if you have any pain, and then they gave me that list, and I had just complete peace. I knew that Olivia was fine and she was well, and it was as it should be.
Why do you think they listened to you?
Well, I asked them to do it again. I don't know. I became such a strong advocate for her. In my position at the time, I was in pharmaceutical sales, so I wasn't really intimidated by the white coats. I sold to them, so my job was to get them to think in a different pattern. I was in sales, so of course I was always advocating for the patient, but I wasn't intimidated by the chart and the white coat. That's what I know. One of the main reasons that I had that life before.
What did the folks in Champaign say?
Oh, later it was a whole big thing. It was like a lot of, it's like, I was just so elated that she was good. I was good. There was I think they were worried, of course, about the legalities of everything. And I was on cloud nine. I was going to be a mom.
Yeah. So you've talked about two really clear situations where, I'll call it, the Holy Spirit really, really spoke to you and guided you and moved you and assisted you and helped you. And you listened, rather than just brush that away. Had it happened to you before?
I was a child, yes. When I was 8 years old, which is the same age that Olivia passed at, when I was 8, I felt such a connection. And I was my parents are religious. I was raised in the church. I was brought up going to Sunday school, and then, vacation Bible school during the summertime. But I was by far the most connected, I think, of my family members. There were 5 of us. And I just felt at age 8, I had it's so strange to talk about, but I had such a spiritual connection to the divine, with animals, with nature. It was such a magical age. I think it was such a gift to me that God, maybe not maybe, of course he knew what was going to be in store for me. So he gave me this magical age, and it happened to be at age 8, where if I would think of a deer would appear. I mean,
were you aware of that? So would you play with it?
Aware of it. I had a bird that would meet me every day after school, Tom. Every day I got off the bus. We lived in the country. I would walk up our country lane from our mailbox to our little farmhouse, and the bird would meet me every single day.
Okay. Let me stop you for a moment. Kirk, I know you're listening. So in December, when we are in Colorado, me, you, and Kirk are going to walk, because I begged him, I want to see a mountain lion and I want to see a black bear. I requested a rattlesnake, and we did see the rattlesnake. We did. Yes, but with your powers, I want to see the mountain lion and I want to see the black bear.
Okay. That was such a magical year. And I always wondered, and it was such a gift because it was whatever I felt God gifted me. And there's no coincidences that 8 is also the sign for infinity, eternity. There is no beginning, there is no end, just like God and our love and life that just goes on and continues, right? What we perceive as a beginning, as an end, it's just our humanness in this human form. So I always wondered, once Olivia was diagnosed, because she was diagnosed at 4.5, and it was such a severe diagnosis with such a poor prognosis, would she ever make it to 8? And she did. She passed at age 8, which is the age that Lily is now. So going back to age 8, it was just such a magical time. So there's only been a handful of times, so we battled her Ewing sarcoma for almost 4 years, and I would say, God, where are you? You were here when I needed you when I was young. You were here when I was in the doctor's office at her conception. I don't feel there was times when I questioned, when I was railing, when I was angry. They were short moments, but I had them. I had them in my humanness, in my mother's heart. I had them. How could you not after, almost 4 years? But we'll go on and I'll continue, and I'll tell you like how he did show up. But when I was asking for that peace and that comfort, it just came in different forms. It didn't come as it did when I was so young and when I was so connected.
Was that confusing for you?
It was because I felt like I worked so hard to bring her here, and he gifted me with this amazing soul. And then 2.5 years later, we had to go for like the big guns. We had to do in vitro to have Lily. Got her on the first try. Even our doctor, there's like a Hallmark movie about this doctor, this like incredible surgeon.
There really is?
Yes. I don't have many skills in life, but my skills are, if you need a medical specialist, find the best one that you can find. It's like, it's an art form, so do your research, find who you need to find. And luckily he was, within driving distance, an hour's drive or a couple of hours drive. So we went to him, and he even told me, really, really lucky. And Lily was such a breeze, like from, well, I mean, if you can call in vitro a breeze, everything after that was just easy. Like we just had one where we could have had 4 or 5. You just never know what you're going to have when you go through all of that path, and kind of how that, there's so many mysteries and kind of unknowns that come along with it. And she was such an easy baby, where Olivia demanded 110% of me all of the time. And I believe that she knew that her time with me was limited.
Yeah.
And she needed and wanted all of me. And she knew that looking back, I would want that time with her. It was so sacred. We weren't going to have as much time as Lily and I, and other experiences and other friendships and relationships that I'll have in the future. So Olivia, I believe, on a soul level, knew that she was here for a limited amount of time. And from day one, she required all of me, and not even required, demanded it all.
And is that something you've come to understand in retrospect, or did you know it at the time?
I knew it at the time that she was so fundamentally wired differently than Lillian. She was colicky. I was the only one that could soothe her. I would hold her in my arms. I would sing to her, and she'd be out.
How
I
old,
slept
how old was she when her sister was born?
2.5.
So you got 2 years of two healthy
Yeah.
daughters.
Yes. Yes. I was still nursing Lily when Olivia was diagnosed.
Oh,
And it was that day that everything stopped. I stopped working. I stopped nursing. It was life completely became, I did my very, very best to juggle both girls and to be able to have Lillian with me as much. And my family is amazing. My parents, my sister, such amazing emotional support.
so
Did
you were working as a sales rep prior to, right before the diagnosis?
for it. So I was in pharmaceutical sales. So it was an amazing job. I had such great benefits looking back, and I had such amazing coworkers. I still remember to this day when we found so Olivia was having these reoccurring tummy aches, cyclical, like month after month after month. And we had just come back from a family. My mom's Canadian. She's from Toronto. So all of my family on my mother's side, they're all Canadian. We had just been in Canada a week before. And we had this wonderful family reunion. We all rented cottages on these lakes in Ontario. It was beautiful. And at one point, Olivia had run into a tree. Like kids were, we were in the country, but she was crying. She was in excruciating pain.
Hmm.
And I thought, what is this? She just ran into a tree. I even saw it happen. But it was the tumor in her abdomen that we didn't even know about. And it was a grapefruit sized tumor in this 4.5-year-old. And it was so large that it caused her such tremendous pain when she ran into this object. So we had a follow-up visit with her pediatrician. I wasn't even there that day. I had a evening program. So I was hosting physicians, and again, I was in pharmaceuticals, so I was hosting physicians. I had a speaker coming in. We were going to have a dinner that night. I was so focused on work for that particular day. Cancer was never, ever, ever on my radar. I was worried about car seats and plastics and UV rays and you name it. I was the water testing. I was worried about all of these other peripheral things, but pediatric cancer was never on my radar, ever.
Do you remember the date when you got the news?
Oh, absolutely. It was July 17th, 2013.
And did someone tell you in person?
So my husband at the time, so he called and he took her to the physician, to the pediatrician with his mother, and he stepped outside and he said, "You need to come. They feel something." And we had taken her 3 months prior, like every month, because she was having these cyclical, we thought it was acid reflux. She would wake up in the morning sometimes and she would throw up. And as a kiddo, I had such a sensitive stomach. Lily has it. So to not go and have my mind go to that worst place now that she's the same age that Olivia was when she passed. But I had such a sensitive stomach. So we would try crackers. We were giving her an acid prescription strength of, a PPI. We were doing all these things, but it was large enough for the pediatrician to feel on July 17th. She could feel it in her abdomen where there shouldn't be a tumor. And it was, again, like grapefruit size, softball size. And her form of cancer is such a sneaky form of pediatric cancer that most cancers are classified stages 1 through 4. Ewing sarcoma is not. It's just either metastasized, which means it's spread, or it's localized. And usually it's already, because it's so sneaky, it's usually already metastasized, and hers had. So it had spread to other areas of the body at the time that they found it. So they felt it. He called me. He said, "You need to get here." I remember that drive. I remember calling my coworkers and screaming on the phone over my Bluetooth saying, this can't be happening. And my coworker saying something just so similar just happened to a friend of mine, and it was her liver enzymes that were out of whack. And, which is what you're thinking, that there's just going to be something benign. Something like this can't happen. It happens to other people. It doesn't happen to you.
Did your former husband suggest that it might be cancer? Did he use that word?
The severity of the pediatrician, he said he didn't know, but his reaction was very, very large. So when driving there, that it was serious. And once they were out of the room, so once I met with her face to face in her office, and it wasn't even our normal pediatrician, he was out of town, so it was his partner. They were out of the room. I was sitting with her, and she had a box of tissues, but beside her, because she couldn't get through the conversation with it, because she knew. And she wrote on a Post-it note, I said, well, what about liver? Because she was on like iron supplements at the time. And she wrote 3 things down: liver, benign, something. And the third thing that she wrote was cancer. I forget what the second one was. It was on a Post-it note. And we were sent immediately to the radiologist at our local hospital, where they did imaging, and then immediately to the big hospital in St. Louis, because at the time we were in central Illinois.
So it must have been really, really rare for this physician to come across a child with this severe of a diagnosis.
Incredibly. And she actually stopped practicing. I'm not drawing a correlation between that and our story, but within the year, she stopped practicing.
So how far did you guys live from St. Louis?
About 3 hours, just a little bit over, depending on traffic.
So did you drive her, or did they transport her?
We drove her. And she was in so much pain because it was so large, and it was just, and of course it had metastasized, and we didn't know. And here, a week before, we had been in Canada on the boats, tubing, running around, toasting marshmallows with all of my aunts and uncles and cousins.
Where was Lily during all of this?
Lily was at home with my in-laws. I stopped, and they told us to go home, pack a bag. And they said, pack a bag like you're going to be there for days. And I nursed her because I was at the time like I wanted to do everything so perfectly. So again, like no BPA plastics. So in my mind, I'm like, I'm giving her the last bit of pure nutrition, health that I could provide this child. I hadn't spent a night away from her other than a couple of business meetings that I had to attend to. But so here was this baby in a onesie, and I'm nursing her for the last time, and I knew that was it. And I was putting on this brave face for Olivia. And she had to drink the contrast. If you've ever had to take a CT scan, or if you've ever been with anybody, they take multiple images, but they need that CT scan, that contrast to go through your bloodstream so that they could look at the different imaging. And talking with her and getting her to drink all of that, it was the first time of probably 50 that she had to go through, and putting on that face, that mask, that this is all going to be okay.
Yeah. And she's 4.5 years old.
4.5 years old. And she's looking to me because I'm her emotional barometer for everything. So my mask has got to be perfected.
When you guys pulled into the hospital in St. Louis, did you go through the emergency room?
They took us through the emergency room, but before that, we stopped. We had to pull over because he had to vomit on the side of the road. And I had to pretend that wasn't happening. and I was holding her in the back, and we had a minivan at the time, and I was trying to distract her and doing silly, funny voices, and I was playing like silly videos on my phone, and he pulled over and vomited. So like, this cannot be happening.
Yeah.
And got back in the car, and I had to pretend that everything is okay. We're just going to go. We're going to get some images of our tummy. This is why our tummy has been feeling good. The doctors are going to make us feel better. And then once we got into the ER, they did additional scans. And then they brought us into another room, and they immediately started talking about cancer. And I said, hold on. That was an option before. That was a concern. And they're like, no, we know that it is. We don't know what kind it is. But she has additional spots on her liver. And we think other places as well. And it is cancer. We just don't know what kind it is.
And did you know enough at the time to know, dang, this is bad?
I knew it was bad, but I didn't know how bad. And I was so frightened that first night that I didn't even want to Google what Ewing sarcoma was. I think I waited like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And again, having so many beautiful friends in the medical community that were like, tell me, I will research, I will Google, I will find it out. They thought neuroblastoma, which is still rare, but it's I guess it's more common than Ewing's. And the way that she presented, she was like an anomaly of an anomaly of an anomaly. Always was, always will be. So she didn't present in the normal fashion.
That was the beginning of a 4-year odyssey for you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And we started in St. Louis, and I immediately began, once I remember walking around that hospital with like, and I was a germaphobe at the time. I remember like just being numb and not even in my body. I was walking around in socks and like pajamas, and just like shocked, because we were going from one set of imaging to another, to meeting with different surgeons. And they immediately put in her port, her double lumen. So at the time, so there's different ways to access. So it's the main artery in your heart, and it's how they will deliver chemo. And if you have to get blood products and all of that, it's a dedicated line to your heart. So they were a fan or a proponent of the double lumen. So it's a delivery system with 2 tubes hanging down with caps on the ends. So here's my 4.5-year-old child. You know how rambunctious kiddos are. She's got spikes into her skin, sewed into her skin, 2 tubes hanging down with caps on the end, and they're just like a part of her, right? Like, we have to tuck them into her dresses, into her shirts. We have to change the dressings around. We have to keep it sterile. The nurses are teaching me how to flush her lines. I'm like writing everything down. I was videotaping how they were going to do it. My mom blessedly was a nurse, and she's a retired nurse, but she like quickly like picked back up all of her skill set and was like, so this is our life. This is what we're doing. I stopped my job. I quit on the day that Olivia was diagnosed. And my amazing company was good enough to keep me on for an additional 6 months.
Wow.
And my benefits and our benefits and all of that like sustained us until, because I was the only one working in my family. I was doing it all. And even before her diagnosis, I knew I couldn't keep up that pace, but I didn't know how to get off the treadmill. It was just it was like I was juggling on a treadmill, and more balls were being thrown at me. And I was like, okay, I've got this, because I've got to have this. And I knew I was so out of alignment, but I didn't know how to stop.
So during that those 4 years that followed, were there peaceful, steady, hopeful periods of time?
Not many. We made the best out of all of it. We went from St. Louis Children's, which is at Barnes, which is where we were first sent, to intermittently we would be back in Champaign at Carle Hospital in Champaign. We would go to Cleveland, ended up being our kind of our final destination, but we lived in New York City at Memorial Sloan Kettering. We lived in a Ronald McDonald House for 11 months, and I had Lily and Olivia.
Say that again. Say that again.
We lived in a Ronald McDonald House for 11 months at the Upper East Side of New York City in Manhattan to go to Memorial Sloan Kettering, which was 3 blocks away. So my mom, myself, Olivia, and Lily, we lived in this studio apartment essentially. And I didn't know what a Ronald McDonald House was. I kind of thought that it was a halfway house. I didn't know when like you're buying your coffee at McDonald's in the morning, they're like, do you want to throw your change in there? You see a kid with an eye patch or whatever, you're like, sure, it looks like they need some change. It is a home for people that have to travel to hospitals for their child's diagnosis, for their child's A team of treatment physicians. And if they can't live at home, they will live at a Ronald McDonald House. So it's not a halfway house. It's not free. In fact, well, because we were staying in like the most expensive city, I guess next to London, in New York City at the time.
So how much was it a night?
It was roughly like $1,100 a month. And then we had a mortgage back home, and I will say that we had amazing people that are angels. When you ask like where is God in all of this? This is where God comes. God shows up in the most unlikely places, in the most unexpected places. And he shows up, and he showed up for us in the form of people that just took care, not always, but when they were able to take care of our stay. And
that's one of the reasons I love that song, The Face of God. It's like, I can be the face of God. I can be the face of God. I can be the face of God.
And that's why I want to still be here. I want to be the face of God for other people going through it, because I know what it's like to be staring at your worst nightmare and think, I don't know how I'm going to get through tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay bills. I have my amazing family that I can rely on, but yet there's a limit to everything, emotional, financial, physical, all of it.
Spiritual.
And spiritual. And when we can show up for one another, and even if it's in our small way, whatever we can do, whatever we can offer, God can use us. He can use us.
Did Olivia ever get to go to school?
She was able to go to school for about 4 months at the school that Lily goes to now, my home school. So when I left, so I graduated in 95 from our little hometown of Table Grove, Illinois. When I left, it was deuces, and it was like nothing but taillights. Like Kim Maddox says, like I could not have been any happier to get out of our little community and like spread my wings. Ironically, I wanted to get to New York City.
Wow.
More than anything.
Wow. Little did you know.
Little did I know. And I recently had a good friend that I was with in New York City, and her daughter, Ella, is a survivor. Ella and Olivia were treated together at Memorial Sloan Kettering. So we lived together for almost a year at the Ronald McDonald House. her story is similar in the fact that she's now divorced. I'm now divorced. She's a single mom, but her daughter is a survivor, where Olivia, of course, is in heaven. She's everywhere, but she always wanted to get to New York. And she's like, who would have thought that New York would have come to us in this crazy kind of serendipitous way?
Did
But
your daughter have a different type of cancer?
she had a different type of cancer, but it was equally rare and sneaky. But that's, the mystery of life. That's just what you have to kind of surrender.
So you told us that Olivia died on April 3rd. When's her birthday?
It's January 13th, 2009.
So what can you tell us about her actual passing?
It was as peaceful as I think you could ask for, given the severity of her disease and the tumor burden, because cancer does pretty horrific things to the body. Nobody dies from cancer. Cancer is what happens to the body. It invades places it shouldn't be. So for her, it invaded her liver, it invaded her lungs, and it was a race between which one of those organs was going to kind of collapse first. So one of the things I had filed away from Lisa and all of these brave souls that had put their journey out before me, and I read and I filed away, hoping and praying that that would never be our story. I learned of ways to ease a person's passing, be it a child, an adult, it didn't matter. I knew, so Olivia was, she relapsed so very quickly. And I can talk to you, if we have time, I can talk to you about the big push that we did with social media and how she was able to change how new Ewing sarcoma patients are treated. But before all of that happened, we had to go with like the status quo of how patients had always been treated. So her disease just exploded inside of her body while we were home here in Illinois. And we went to our local hospital in Peoria, which is about an hour and 10 minutes away. And they have a St. Jude's affiliate hospital. While we were there, they did additional imaging, and we could not believe what the images showed, which was just explosive disease. It was everywhere. But until I heard it from her physician, her A team, I was just focused on getting her there to her people. So once we were there and we learned, and they didn't even believe, they looked at the imaging and they said, there's got to be something wrong. Something doesn't make sense that this has happened within a month's time, but it had. They thought it was infection. They thought it was all of these other things. But once they had narrowed it all down and they realized it was tumor growth, we knew that our time was super limited, and we had run out of options. So our goal then changed, and it was to keep her as comfortable as possible. And I gave her the choice that we come back home and we do a hospice, or we stay there with her team that she had become so familiar with. And even though they were in Cleveland, Ohio, and we were in Table Grove, Illinois, like a 10-hour drive without stopping, she chose to stay there. I'm so grateful that she did, because I was able to be mom.
Yeah.
I could still advocate for her and say, like, press the button, we need this, we need that. But I didn't have to deliver those doses of oxy or fentanyl or whatever it was. I could just be mom and hold her, and they would take care of her. But I let her choose that. And I will say that there was a lot of family discussion on the back end of what the right choice was. And there was some disagreement. But I let it I let Olivia decide, and she decided to stay. And I was so grateful. I was so grateful because all of our angels showed up. God walked through that door over and over and over again. I would pray and I would say, God, where are you? Where are you? Like Christ on the cross, right before like his transition, like, what are you now? You're leaving.
Yeah, don't forsake me.
Forsake me. And then here he would send in another angel through that door. And it was like, there's goosebumps because there's no coincidences. These were angels coming through, delivering needs that I hadn't even spoken the words of, but my soul knew that we needed, and she needed, and my family, my mom, my sister Lillian needed. That was God showing up for us in the most unlikely of ways and the most unlikely of places. And that's where she passed.
Did you know that at the time? At the time, did you think, okay, God is present. God is sending this person. This is the
Yeah,
presence. Okay, good.
I did. I knew I was still waiting for our miracle. I was still asking. I never gave up hope that we would receive our miracle,
And what was the miracle?
that she would live forever.
A spontaneous cure
Yes,
for,
absolutely.
for the
She was
terminal.
yeah, she was diagnosed at 4. So we would always pray, take her at 104. Like if I'm going to pray, and if I'm going to put, if I'm going to send out a prayer into the universe to God, I'm going to make it a good one. Why shouldn't she get 104 here? So that was always my prayer. And so God sent us these angels, and I was faced with the decision because her tumor burden was in her lungs and in her liver. It compressed her breathing so much, and it caused so much, of course, anxiety when you have that ataxia, like you can't take a breath. And I will say that she was blessed with good days right up until her last 36 hours. There was moments of beauty. And I have journaled things that she said that are out of this world, beautiful. But I was holding on to this. Okay, God, if you take her, this is what I want you to do. I wanted her to tell me as she's transitioning, Mom, this is what I see. Jesus is here. Nana is here. You know, Auntie Janice is here. Like we had at the foot of her bed in the hospital, these amazing people, again, angels, came in and they said, what can we do for you? It was an organization that transformed her hospital room into a dream room.
Wow.
Olivia, what are your favorite colors? What do you love? What makes you happy? They went out, they shopped. Within the next day, it was on the walls.
Wow.
Angels. I don't even remember all of their names. I think I've got pictures on my phone somewhere. Angels. They are God's angels. They served a purpose. I hope that I get to thank them one day. I hope that I get to pay it forward in some way or another. Again, God's hands. So they transformed this sterile hospital room into this beautiful space for her. And one of the things that we did as a family, she was always the strongest faith of anybody that I've ever known was with my Olivia. So at the foot of her bed, we had the tapestry of Christ. So there's this, I don't know if you've seen the movie Heaven is for Real. Okay. So the girl depicted in that movie, it's a true story. She's from, I believe, the Ukraine or Romania, Akain or Akaine, however you say her name. At 8 years old, Olivia's age, again, no coincidences.
Wow.
And she's the product of, her parents at the time were atheists. she had these visions of God and of Christ, and he would walk her through heaven, and she would wake up and she just began painting. She had never painted before. Olivia was mesmerized with her story.
Mm.
And always, 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 she would go off and I would find her by herself, Olivia, and I would say, "What are you doing, kiddo?" And she'd say, "I just miss God." And she would have tears in her eyes at such, like at 4 or 5 years old. "I just miss God." And I would think, "Lord, don't you take my child. Don't you take my child." But in my heart, I thought, I'm so glad that she feels this strong connection. And she always did. When I say like she was such an old soul, always was.
Did she say I miss God prior to the cancer diagnosis?
I don't remember. I don't know that she did, but when she was born, I will never forget, and it upset my husband so much, my former husband, because she would stare off into, and she would have such a smile on her face, and I knew in my heart, Tom, I knew what she was looking at. She would look into the corner, into the light, and she would smile when babies aren't supposed to smile. And I would say, "Are you seeing your friends? Are you seeing the angels?" And he would say, "Stop, stop," because his daughter, or his sister died when she was 8.
Oh my Lord.
So whole like family, and he's from like, he's first generation of the old country, so the Greek background where they do grief the old way, so traditionally, where it's mourning and it's black and you keep the shutters drawn, not just for yourself, but the perception that you're grieving, because you don't want the others to think that you're healing and you're moving on, because that brings shame. So it was like layer upon layer upon layer. So I was in that world for about 20 years. And I thought, even before Olivia became sick, I thought, where's the light? Where's the love? Our loved ones don't want that. And then here's Olivia, this bright soul, looking and smiling in places that I just knew that she was seeing something that I wasn't. I knew that she was seeing loved ones that were checking in on her. And I was immediately like, don't talk about that.
They, they,
That's not.
they were probably whispering, "We'll see you soon, sweetheart."
I know, like, yeah, you're not going to be here long. Enjoy what you can. Enjoy all of those snuggles. We're going to see you really, really soon. We're taking good care of you. We're
Yeah.
going to be throughout all of this experience.
And we'll take good care of your mommy too.
Yes, absolutely. And then she painted this. So this is her depiction, and she was 4 when she made this. So we've always been into arts and crafts, and we've been a family that's always got paints and canvases around. And as, as Lily is like slapping on all kinds of colors, Olivia was just so focused on this and on this particular orb. And she goes, she worked on it for a long time, layer after layer, but on this. And I said, okay, it's beautiful, but I'm thinking, okay. And I said, what is it? She goes, honey, she goes, mommy, it's God, and it's heaven. And then you get like the mom of this kiddo that does not want to think about their child ever leaving in the physical sense. But I said, okay, don't you want to like do a cross or maybe some wings? She goes, mommy, it's perfect. I'm done. So when Olivia crossed over, I have no doubt in my mind that this is what she saw. And they were her favorite colors. And I keep it. So now Lily and I are in our new space in our new house, and not everything is kind of transitioned over. A lot of the things are still at my parents' farmhouse, but this is one of the pieces that had to come with us.
So how old was she when she painted that?
She was 4, just a little over, between 4 and 5.
Had she already been diagnosed?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you
And she's,
did you ever talk with her about the possibility she would die?
I did. And I will tell you that I lied. And I feel good about that. If that sounds, I'm just honestly, she had such separation anxiety being away from me. I enrolled her in like a pre-K when she was 3.5. Lily was just born. I thought, oh, it'll be good for socialization. We lived in the country. It was this great pre-K academy in town, very prestigious. I thought, well, it'll be great for her. It'll be good for her. She was miserable and
She wanted to be
hated.
back home with mom.
She clung to my leg. It was all of those like worst case scenarios that you always see. Like she just did not want to be away from me.
She's thinking, don't you know, mom, our time is limited. I'm not leaving you.
And then I'm kind of a hippie at heart. So, especially after she was diagnosed, I started researching everything on chemicals. And so we make our own soap. So I was making soap in the garage at my parents' house once the girls and I moved back home starting in 2016. Olivia passed away a year later. We're in the garage. It was August. I'm wearing goggles because I'm working with lye. Like it's just, it's hot work. It's kind of, it's messy. I love it because you're mixing like essential oils and goat's milk and all of this like weird funky stuff. But she was sitting in the garage with me. Lily was swinging on the tree swing, like having a heyday. And Olivia goes, Mom, are you spending extra time with me because you know I'm going to die soon? And it was like all of the air just left my body. And I had to take a deep breath. And I said, you're here with me because you want to be. Lily's doing her own thing. I said, you know what? Only God knows when he's going to call us each home. And that's what I always told her. But towards the end,
Did
when
she say anything?
no, but other times she said, and she made just this hand gesture I'll never forget because she asked if she would die. And she was so worried. When we were in the hospital, and you have to understand, she never let me leave her. I couldn't physically leave her. So in order for me to take a shower, even like each hospital is different, but as we progressed and as the hospitals came to know us, parents were able to shower like in the child's room. And once we had private rooms, I didn't have to go down into like, a public area and, go like 2 or 3 hallways away. I was right there with her, but she did not want to be alone. So one of her nurses would come and stay with her. She did not want me to leave ever. And even if I had to go get a cup of coffee, someone else would sit with her, or she would unplug her IV pole and she'd walk out into the hallway and come down with, lots of times I would just, if I could, I would have someone else bring me a cup of coffee or I would just go without. But she never wanted to be away from me. She was so anxious about our separation. And then she would ask if she was going to die. And I said, honey, only God knows when he's going to call us home. And when we were in New York, it was such a people, of course, at all large hospitals, but especially Memorial Sloan Kettering, you've got your people from all over the world coming in there. It's their last hope, right? They're there. And when we were in Germany, we went to Germany for 2 months, and it was private clinics. Like insurance doesn't cover that, but they're able to do things that our FDA will not allow because it's not approved. It hasn't been tested. But when you're out of options, you'll do whatever. Like when you guys went to Texas for Rory, right? So you start meeting these other people and you'll do whatever it takes. And she would say, but Mom, what if my body gets tired? And I said, honey, your body is young. Your body is young. God only calls the older people home. And she said to me one night, and I'll never forget, like her gesture was just, she goes, I'm just afraid that I'm getting tired and my body is just going to go away. And I said, well, honey, if it goes away, Mommy's going to be right behind you. We're all going to be right behind you. So I so held on to this idea that if it did happen, she would be able to communicate with me what was happening. She would be able to say, Mom, I see Grandma. And we had at the foot of her bed the tapestry of Christ from the painting. And then we had all of our loved ones that had crossed over before us. We had them on this beautiful like pegboard. And we didn't tell her like they're all in heaven. We just said these are our loved ones because we wanted her to see and know the faces that would be greeting her. And every night we would say our prayers and she would call upon our loved ones, our ancestors that have gone before us. And those were her words, not mine. So on the foot of her bed, she's got the tapestry of Christ. She's got all of our loved ones that have gone before us. So in my mind, I'm thinking, God, if you take my child, you will let me know. We will have that moment where she speaks, Mom, Aunt so-and-so is here. Grandma Ruth is here. Grandma Annabelle is here. But as the way life happens, as the way disease happens, we had to be faced, and it was an easy decision because she was so uncomfortable. The tumor burden was just taking over her lungs. She couldn't catch a deep breath. So we had to give her medication to calm her down, to slow her breathing, her respiratory rate down, to give her enough pain medication to keep her calm as she transitioned. And they told us, they gave us the option, and of course there was no option. I'm not going to have her suffer, right? They gave us the option of doing that, sedating her enough to make her comfortable as she eased into her transition, or keeping her awake. And they said, but you won't be able to communicate with her anymore. And so for a while, in that minute, I felt like I'm going to be robbed of this experience of her, or she's going to be robbed of like telling us this validation. But I will say, in the moments after she transitioned, angels came through that door in the form of police officers and redcoats, which are what they call it, the Cleveland Clinic, like the people that will take you from your car to radiology or wherever you need to go. And they would come in with stories of their loved ones, verbalizing their last moments, which we didn't get to receive with Olivia because she couldn't verbalize it because we had to sedate her. So here, they were given the opportunity to share their testimony, and we were the recipients of all of this love. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
It's amazing.
What also is amazing is the way you have chosen to look at so many things. I mean, it says a lot about who you are. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. And you're a living example of shifting to bring peace to yourself and bring peace to your daughter.
Well, there's the way that none of it is the way that we wanted it to be, of course. I would want her to be here, to be going into 5th grade. But she's on the other side of all of us, and she's holding all of us. But there's a different way to look at it, and it's seeing, God, where are you? Oh, God showed up as the Serbian monk that came to us. I'm not Serbian. I was raised Methodist. But yet here is this man that literally was the size of this doorway that came through with his cloak and his all of his oh, all of this gold, and it's just everything that is so opposite of the Methodist church, which is very like modest, right? Like you've got your pulpit and maybe a little bit of stained glass, but they don't want to take a lot away from the Holy Spirit. And he came in with his icons and just such love. It didn't even matter that the package, the delivery of everything, and he stayed with us and he prayed with us. He prayed over Olivia and he prayed through the night and he prayed through the morning. And when things turned ugly with Olivia's father, he stayed and he protected us through all of that.
Mm. Whose idea was it to put the tapestry of Christ and all of the ancestors on the wall?
It was actually, well, Olivia wanted the tapestry of Christ there. And then my mom and I and family, my sister was involved in that. So we had this pegboard that these angels that had decorated Olivia's room, they had put there, and we thought, who needs to be at the foot of her bed but the people that will be greeting her on the other side? So we, everybody was emailing and finding pictures, and again, we're doing this from like 3 states away, but we wanted her to see. And we told her, this is cousin Janice, and she had this amazing laugh that we didn't speak in like, she's passed. Again, Olivia was 8 and was very, very fearful. One of the things that I still try to make peace with is that she was afraid to pass. As much as she loved the Lord, she was human in her body. She did not want to leave her family.
She was 8 years old.
8 years old. So she, I believe, this very old soul, this enlightened being, but yet still in her physical form. It was hard for her. How could it not be?
Yeah, she's 8 years old. I got to ask you this. I'm intrigued by this. I love that you said to God more than once, you can't have her. You can't take her. She's not going with you. No, 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 no. Did somewhere along the line, did a shift occur? And did you say, well, okay, I'll give my daughter to you? Or like to the very end, we were like, no, no, no.
I think it happened in shifts. So I saw that we had done everything that we could. So we had gone from St. Louis to New York, back to St. Louis, and then New York closed their doors. They said, don't come back. We're giving her 6 months. And I said, absolutely not. That's not acceptable. Then we went to Germany. She relapsed on her 7th birthday. Then we went to Cleveland. Then we went to Dallas every Friday for a clinical trial, which she wasn't even accepted into.
Did you fly?
And we flew every Friday. Well, 3 Fridays, I forget the schedule, 3 Fridays on, 1 Friday off. That was like her washout period. And it was 30-year-old chemo. It was a clinical trial, but it was the best that we had because pediatric cancer clinical trials move at a snail's pace. And they had to prove that you were randomized into the standardized treatment, which was 30 freaking year old chemo or this new immunotherapy. So everybody's goal was to get into the immunotherapy. She wasn't randomized into that arm, but I still said, okay, we'll do it, because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to get her immunotherapy. So we went to Dallas. They did the surgery. They took her tumor and they made a vaccine from her own tumor, because the whole idea of cancer is that it invades the body, but it's so tricky that the body doesn't know it's there. And these cells continue to proliferate. They don't die, unlike the natural cells in our body, right? Our own immune system doesn't recognize them. So the technology of this immunotherapy, which is kind of the cutting edge for all cancer therapies in the future, will be this immunotherapy, getting the body to recognize that foreign thing is actually there. So she was randomized into the 30-year-old chemotherapy. She had the worst adverse effects that have ever been recorded. We took pictures of it. It's the only time that I've documented sad pictures of her, but I did it in order to get her vaccine. And then we worked with a social media group, this PR company, and we flooded Facebook. And I've never been like this cranky, squeaky wheel, but long story short, we had 250,000 people storm Facebook, storm there, and they were doing everything that the FDA required of them, but it was still this old antiquated way of doing therapy. So because of Olivia, they have now treated Ewing sarcoma differently. So she was a catalyst for so much change, not only with pediatric cancer, but especially with Ewing sarcoma, and how the trials are done now. Now patients can get it sooner. They don't have to be randomized into all of this. So I go back to the why. And I think that she was that soul that, as God was giving out his assignments, and he's saying, okay, this is going to be a tough one. This is going to require a lot of hardship and a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of anxiety, but I'm going to send you an amazing support system that will carry you along the way. You will be the catalyst for change, but there's also going to be immense suffering. And I see Olivia like coming forward out of the sea of souls, standing and holding her hand up and saying, send me. I will be the one. I'll volunteer for this task and I'll see it done. That's how I think of.
Right, but if I may add this, God said the exact same thing, and you raised your hand and you said, send me. I will be the catalyst for change. I will love through the suffering, through the suffering, through the suffering. And unlike Olivia, who is home with that beautiful tapestry of Jesus and all the ancestors, you're still on the planet. And you could have taken a completely different turn with your life. Completely different. But you said, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. And you're doing it.
I'm doing it with the grace of others showing me that it's possible.
Absolutely.
Only because I've been led.
Absolutely. So it's clear to me that you absolutely believe in God. What do you believe that God actually is?
So my belief system has changed. It's just expanded. It hasn't completely altered. I just think that God is more than my initial kind of childhood belief system of good and bad, heaven and hell. I think hell is separation from God, separation from love. It's what we create. If we choose to create that, we can choose our hell. But I have sat with moms that are holding children with so much cancer burdening their bodies that they were going home within hours. They're Muslim, they're Jewish, they're different faiths than me. Do I think that God is not taking their babies and is taking mine because I'm a Christian? Absolutely not. I know that those babies and those moms and those ancestors are all going home. I know that they are. So that's where my belief system has changed. It's just expanded. It's not as black and white as it once was. And as I say that, I don't want to let down anybody that that has raised me or that I've grown up with in my beautiful, loving community that is very Protestant and is very conventional. But my experiences have been that God is much more expansive than what we give him credit for. And I still think of Jesus when Lily and I say our prayers at night, we talk to Olivia all of the time. I think of that tapestry of Christ. That is the face of God for me. That's the face of the Son of God. But it's so much more expansive than that. And it's energy. And it's all around us. It's not just in the clouds. It's not just in the sunshine, but it's everywhere. It's in every cell, every fiber of our being.
And where is Olivia today?
She's everywhere. She's everywhere. She's everywhere she wants to be. And I believe that when I call her in, she can be here with me. When I really need her, when Lily really needs her. Usually Lily's not so much of a morning person. So when we're on our drive to school and Lily's kind of sour and she'll see that cardinal in the morning, which happens 9 times out of 10. I'm like, that is Olivia showing up for you because that's what you needed in the morning to remind you that you're surrounded by love, that you're not alone as you're walking into school.
Does the God that you believe in welcome everybody home or just some people home?
I think everybody that wants to go home. I don't know. I have sat down with him. When we were in Germany, we had such a beautiful experience of being with really everywhere, even in New York, every large city that we've ever been in, but especially in Germany, where you had so many people. And there it was like, we were in this kind of this experimental, we were in Bavaria. So they were able to do things in Germany that was for private pay patients that you couldn't do in all parts of Europe. So we were able to meet some really interesting people from all walks of life, Hindus and Sikhs, and to sit down and hear their belief systems. And I know, and the majority of those patients, because you're not in Germany at a private pay clinic because you've got a really good prognosis.
Right.
There because you're on your last chance. Your last chance. You want to take another chance at life, but the doctors, your conventional doctors, traditional doctors have most likely given up on you, right? And all walks of life are there. And my belief system just grew and expanded. All of those people are beautiful souls. And I think that God is everywhere. We are wherever we're meant to be.
You are a perfect living example of the quote from Richard Rohr that I love, and that is, "We become the God we worship." You have become the God that you worship, and the God that you worship has expanded immensely as a result of your daughter's life and as a result of her passing. I mean, you paint a beautiful picture of that.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's grown. My belief system has changed and expanded so much. I don't know that it would have if it were not for this experience. I would love to still have Olivia here in my arms and in this bed that she loved more than anything else, and to be able to have these life experiences in a perfect world. If I could dream such, I would have both the lessons and I would still have her. But this is where we're at. And I know I'm going to be with her again.
Would you say that your relationship with her continues?
Absolutely, it does. I hear her in my head So many people have been gifted with dreams. I have not, and I don't know if you have with your loved ones. And I don't know that
A,
you.
a handful of dreams.
I I had one where I could hear her, and I knew it wasn't a dream. I heard her, and I heard her calling our dog Sophie. And Sophie was this most amazing golden retriever who was my first child before I ever had Olivia. And she passed within the year after Olivia passed.
Mm.
Um, and I heard Olivia calling Sophie, and we would always call her Soph, in like this high pitched voice. And it wasn't a dream. It was so real, and it was just on the edge of a dream. I didn't see it, but I heard it, and I know that that was a gift. So part of my story was when I first, and I know that we're kind of coming up on the hour and a half.
That's okay.
I couldn't sleep after Olivia's diagnosis. I never ever had sleep issues. I was always a great sleeper. Insomnia was never part of my world. But after cancer entered my world, I could not turn my brain off. So I started taking whatever doctors would prescribe me. Not that I was like popping all of these pills, but I started with Lunesta, and then I went up to Ambien, and then 5 milligrams didn't work anymore. I needed to go to 10 milligrams. And then I would take a Clonopin on top of that. And then guess what? I would take all of that, and I still was not sleeping. So after just the 1 year point, I had a couple of healings with a beautiful light worker friend. And she said, you know what? It's time to stop taking all of those meds. And I thought, well, maybe in my mind, in my human mind, I thought, maybe that's what's stopping Olivia from coming to me. Maybe it's all these meds, the sleep pills that are like stopping me from being able to communicate with her in my dreams. And I don't think that's it. I just think it's a timing thing. She's off exploring, doing whatever she needs to do. I believe that it's going to happen in the right time, in the perfect time. Would I love for it to happen tonight? Absolutely. But know that she's doing amazing things, exploring, visiting, checking in on me, family members. She gifts other family members with her presence in beautiful ways, and they share those with me. Her nurses, one of her nurses who became such a dear friend, went into hospice right after Olivia passed. No coincidence. So, and she gifts her with dreams all of the time. I know that I'll be gifted with that when the timing is right.
So you're a mom, now a single mom, whose daughter had a 4-month journey with a terminal cancer. Olivia passed away 3 years ago, which isn't that long. You got a divorce subsequently. You're raising Lily. What does your future look like? What are you thinking? What are you hoping? I mean, do you have hope when you wake up in the morning?
Yeah, I have hope, and I have a vision of what I want. And it's more of a big picture. I've learned to let go of the little details because my details are not always aligned with what will be. So 4 years ago, so Olivia passed 3 years ago, 4 years ago, in a pretty dramatic way, my girls and I left their dad, and we came. Olivia had a surgery in Dallas, so we were there, and it was unusual that he was there with us. But for this particular time, as it was divinely meant to be, he was there with us in Dallas for this procedure, and life happened a really big way. And the girls and my parents ended up driving and picking my daughters and I up. I left with 2 suitcases and a double stroller, and that's it. So I moved back home. I left my house. husband, checking account, security, everything, to come back home to my family farm in Table Grove, Illinois, population 400. And I had a choice in doing that, but it was the best choice for us. I guess there's always a choice, but that was the safest. That was the only choice for us. And I've come to realize that it's been the biggest blessing. Olivia's last year was spent on our family farm. It was her, even though she was fighting this cancer, it was her best and most glorious year ever.
Wow.
It was beautiful. It was filled with love and serenity and so many blessings and unexpected blessings from my parents, my mom and my dad, and Lily and I, just to be able to finally come down and take a breath and just to be. Even though we had to do those Friday flights to Dallas back and forth from Peoria or Bloomington, Illinois to Dallas to get her chemo to come back, we made friends with the TSA agents. I'm still friends with them to this day. They gifted her with the blanket and the neck pillow that she passed away, literally wearing. Again, angels that show up for you in the most unexpected of places. So now, 3 years later, it's all the new life. I'm a single mom. It's Lily and I forging our way in my hometown of 400 people, where sometimes I feel like I'm living under a microscope and in a fishbowl. And I know that a lot of that I put on myself because everyone's going about their day, thinking about their own life. Nobody's really thinking about this girl that much.
No, I promise you they're not.
But in my ego, like in the beginning days, I just felt like the elephant in the room at pickup after school, dropping off. What must people think about me? I'm this single mom, this broken family, whatever it is, that those stories that we tell ourselves, all this pressure. And I've realized, and I still do it, I'm not perfect at it, but so much of that I put on myself. My parents told me within like the hours, days after we left their dad, we had to get emergency order protection to be able to protect us from him. They said, "Why did you ever think that you couldn't come home?" Which is the most loving thing they could say, but it was just nothing but shame because I felt like I'm the farmer's daughter who makes, this is my choice. I'm gonna work through it. I'm gonna make the most out of it. I'm not gonna fail. Nobody in my family has ever gotten divorced, in my like immediate family. And of course it happens. It's 2020, but in my immediate family, nobody's ever done it before. So I got the terminal kid. I got the really messy 4-year-long custody battle. And I've no longer have this corporate job, which I could go back to. They were amazing to me, but I couldn't be my best self at that job. Not now, not with Lily, not here, not for her, not for me. That wouldn't work anymore. So it's creating a whole new life, whole new career, whole new circle of friends, whole new belief system. How do you do that in a town of 400 people where you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders? You just kind of have to take a deep breath every day and do the best that you can and think, I'm not that important. Most people aren't getting up in the morning thinking about what I'm doing.
That's true.
And do the best for Lily and I. And the best way that we can forge ahead and have the most magical life that I can create for her because she deserves it. And I want it too, for me and for her.
Do you think you deserve it?
I know she deserves it. Yes, I think I deserve it, but I really, really, really want to give it to her. Her and then me.
Well, what you gave her older sister, you said the last year of her life was her best and most glorious year. And
Yeah,
I know you know this, but that's a gift you gave yourself as well.
it is. That I will tell you, when we left, because we left a hotel in Dallas when my parents came to get us. I'll never forget that phone call. And my parents drove from Illinois, from Table Grove to Dallas to come get us. And when we left, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, just the timing of it all. We got into that car and there was lightning, and there was the most magnificent lightning thunderstorm around. And I could not believe the feeling of the weight lifted off of my shoulders, off of all of us. And it was as if the universe was responding to all of that. That we were free. We were free and we had done it. We were safe. We were taking care of ourselves and we were being taken care of.
Are you proud of yourself?
I am.
Are you at all amazed at this unbelievable life you've lived in 42 short years?
They feel like 42 really long years. I remember thinking not long ago, as I was laying in my childhood bedroom, I think Lily was at her dad's for the weekend, and I was in a dark place still. And I remember thinking, if you can recover from this, this will be the biggest comeback story of all times. Like, just devastation on every level. Like, how does one come back from this? Like, literally leaving everything. Like, there was no exit plan, there was no safety net. I mean, my amazing family has been this most amazing safety net, but coming back and sleeping in your childhood bedroom, like living in your parents' home. And I'm thinking, if I can make my way out of this, this is going to be a bestseller. Like, nobody does this. Nobody can come back from this. How would I do it?
Are you doing it?
Baby steps, but I'm doing it. I am doing it.
So when we first started talking, you said, I'm really, really nervous.
Yeah.
Are you really, really nervous now?
No, I'm not.
So you've shared with us really a fascinating, fascinating, fascinating story on so many different levels. The experience you had when you were 8. I'm mesmerized by the fact that you put the tapestry of Jesus with the ancestors, at the foot of your daughter's bed, and talked with her so that she would be familiar with who was going to greet her. I've never heard anybody do that before. That's a huge, huge game changer, and that says so much about who you and your family are. It's clear to me that you're fascinated by, you know, the conception of Olivia, but you were aware of a miracle taking place at the time it was taking place, which is, to me, that's being in the presence of the divine. You were aware of that. You knew, and what a special soul this child is that chose you to be her mommy. Yes, 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 yes. Have you had the luxury yet, and I do think it's a luxury, of sitting and thinking, well, who the hell am I? Who the hell am I? I mean, do you have a sense, like, who are you? You know, in the biggest, grandest soul version, who are you?
I am this luckiest mama in the world that had to fight to bring her babies into the world. And I get the most two amazing souls to be moms to. And Olivia was, and I'll say this with complete truth and transparency, just this natural soulmate of mine. And Lily is, she and I are a work in progress. And you were so brave. And my first meeting with you in Wisconsin, when face-to-face meeting, when you were telling me about your relationship with Sean, you gave me the grace to say, like, okay, because it is work. And it makes sense because Lily had to bond with my mom and my sister, and because I had to be away so much, and we did our very, very, very best to bring us all in together. And we were in New York together, in Cleveland together. We even went to Germany together to keep us together as much as we could. But I'm just so blessed to bring these two souls into the world. And on the second healing journey that I did with you on Zoom, you and I talked on the very last call, and I said, okay, moving forward, because it was right before the Becoming Radiant in North Carolina at Joni's. You said, okay, where do you all want to be? And I said, I feel like my old self felt like I needed to advocate for childhood cancer. I needed to fundraise. I needed to draw awareness. Look at this happiness. And there's so many people that are called to do that.
Thank God.
God, I don't want that. I was in sales before, so you would think it would be that natural transition and that fit. And you said, Jessica, go back and listen to this conversation. I think you're going to have your answer when you hear your voice, when you talk about one versus the other. Because there is such beauty to be found on the other side, whether it's helping later on down the road souls transition, be it like hospice, because there is a position called a doula for the dying.
Yes.
A doula that brought Olivia into the world because I didn't want to have an MD, so I had a doula,
right?
Because she was out, working with me. So if I could help people transition, but that would be, I know that I'm not there yet. I wouldn't serve that family in its totality. I'm not there. But what I feel called to do is to help other people that are saying yes to the possibility that there is hope on the other life of this. Two things that I want to say really quickly, and I'm so sorry because I'm long-winded and we're going over. But there was a quote, and it's circulating in all of the grief, Facebook pages and everything, cancer pages, but it's the death of a child is like having an anxiety attack that you never wake up from, something along those lines. And then there's like this really dreary meme that goes along with it. And I saw that and I thought, no, I don't want that to be my story. Olivia does not want that to be my story. And the other part is that I'm married into this family that is very much seeped into the old world and the old way of doing grief, where you have to wear black for a certain number of years. You don't dance at weddings. There's certain things that you don't do. There's the protocol. And I saw that almost as a, and God bless them. That's their belief system. I don't judge it. It's just not what I want for me. I saw that as, if that's the benchmark for what life will look like, that's not life. That's being trapped in some type of living hell. And that's not what Olivia wants for me. How am I serving my fellow man by doing that, by being locked in it? That doesn't feel good. I know that's not for me. If I can help anybody to see that there's light at the end of the tunnel by showing them that there's another way, by helping them, leading them to additional resources, because I have been divinely led by other brave souls that have said, I'm messy. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm going to be really honest and transparent in my messiness. And here's who's helped me. And his name was Tom. And here's 10 things that he's learned in 10 years, or whatever that is. If I can be a little part of that, then I think that's why I'm here.
And I would suggest that it's not if you can be that. That's exactly who you are. Tonight, you are the brave soul who painted a picture for many, many, many people that are with us live and that will see this recorded. And you have shown them that there's a new way. You know, there's a new way to do grief. And if they say yes to it, they can create a new way to do life. And you are a living, breathing example of that.
Thank you.
Do you have like one final thought or one final gift that you would like to give folks that are listening live or that will be listening to the recording? You know, take a couple of breaths and think about it. If, you know, if there was one thing to end this incredible conversation with, what do you want to leave folks with?
I would say to lean into what feels good, to what your heart is telling you, to what you feel called to hear, because that's not just a coincidence. That's God nudging you in the right direction, whether it's finding your page or a YouTube connection or whatever it is. You do not have to be steeped in sorrow to stay connected to your loved one. For the first few months, I thought, to honor Olivia, I have to be in this sorrow. That's my only way to stay connected. That's my only way to honor her, to honor our bond, is to be in this. But that does not glorify her in any way. That does not shine a light on her story. Her story is so much bigger than all of this. As is Rory's, as is Trish, as in Aaron's, and all of our loved ones on the other side. All of our ancestors are holding hands on the other side, waiting for us to say, it doesn't have to be so sorrowful here. You don't have to stay in this pit of misery and grief in order to stay connected. That doesn't mean that you love me anymore. It's okay to lean into the light, and it's okay to lean into what feels good. And if it feels good and if it resonates with you, lean into that. Even if it's a little bit scary and if it's outside of your belief system a little bit, I promise you, it's not as scary as what you perceive it to be. Explore it. And there's a reason that it's calling to you. Because for me, it was my truth to explore outside of that. And it felt scary, and it felt like I was leaving my old belief system, but I'm not. It's just expanding. And my God is all encompassing. It's not judging. He's not judging. He wants to pull me in closer. Olivia wants to pull me in closer.
And tonight, you've pulled all of us in closer.
Hope so.
You have. My hope is that you will be able to find the time to watch this yourself, and that will enable you to see yourself the way that those of us that know you and are getting to know you better, I want you to be able to see yourself the way that we see you. You're a remarkable human being, and your daughter lives and shines through you. You painted a beautiful picture of who Olivia was, is, and always will be. Your connection to the divine is extraordinary, and your willingness to be real and vulnerable and honest gives each one of us permission to do the same. So I know you were nervous. I really, really am so grateful that you said yes and that you trusted me. And the fact that we get to move forward with our council of advisors as we open our heart to the universe, to the Holy Spirit, to Olivia's Jesus, and to God, and say, lead us where you would like us to go. You know, the fact that you're going to be a part of that, I can't tell you how grateful I am, and how really, I have 2 dead kids and a dead wife. I am so excited to be alive, and I'm so excited to see what are we going to collectively create? What's going to come through us? You know, how many lives will we be able to change?
I agree. I'm fascinated. I feel like a kid in school in the front row, and for the first time in I don't know how long. I'm excited to see what life has in store, not afraid of this is what life has done, but excited to see what's coming next and trusting that it's all unfolding for us, not against us, but for us. So,
Absolutely,
so
absolutely. So thanks for thanks for your time tonight. I want you to stick with me. I'm going to say goodbye to folks, but I'm not going to drop you yet. What I want to say, thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you so much, Jessica. I'm excited. Tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m. Central, right here, is going to be the premiere of Anna and Margot. They'll be with us for the next, I don't know, 4 or 5 Wednesday nights. So tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m. right here, Anna and Margot. I will be back here Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Central, and then I'll see you again Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. Central. So as always, thank you for being with us. Take really, really good care of yourselves. I will see you Thursday night. I will say goodbye. Goodbye.
bye.
Let me stop the recording.